Let's get right to that crucial Supreme Court decision. Our political reporter, Paris Schutz, is here to tell us what this means for former President Trump. Paris?
Sylvia, it means a lot for former President Trump, but it also means a lot for the office of the presidency going forward. The 6-3 ruling will likely add to the confusion surrounding Trump's outstanding criminal legal cases related to January 6th and the Mar-a-Lago documents. So the gist of this decision is that the president does enjoy immunity for official acts taken as president, but does not have immunity for unofficial acts unrelated to carrying out his job. So what does that mean for the cases? Well, for January 6th, the Supreme Court ruled that some of his alleged conduct does actually fall under official presidential duties. Others, they're not so sure, and so the court is sending it back to lower courts to decide that. In its majority opinion today, the justice says, quote, such an immunity is required to safeguard the independence and effective functioning of the executive branch and to enable the president to carry out his constitutional duties without undue caution. And former President Trump clearly takes this to mean that he believes the cases will be dropped against him, although that's not necessarily true, as we mentioned. In his Truth Social post, he said, quote, big win for our Constitution and democracy. Proud to be an American. And then listen to this dissent from Justice Sotomayor predicting very dire potential outcomes. Quote, the president of the United States is the most powerful person in the country, possibly the world. When he uses his powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, and I pray they never do, the damage has been done. The relationship between the president and the people has shifted irrevocably in every use of official power. The president is now a king above the law. And swift reaction pouring in today all over the country, including here in Illinois. The ACLU Illinois says, quote, the decision invites lawlessness and abuse of power by a rogue president. It is a sad day for American justice. And Governor Pritzker knows where he stands on this. Quote, when Trump tried to overturn the results of an election he lost in 2020, it was not the official act of a president. It was the act of a despotic narcissist attempting to overthrow our democracy to cling to power. And he needs to answer for his actions. Will he answer for January 6th and his alleged conduct? Well, this certainly narrows special counsel Jack Smith's case, so look for Smith to lay out the alleged conduct that he believes falls outside of the scope of immunity determined today by this Supreme Court ruling. Sylvia.
All right, thanks for that, Paris. Attorney Karen Conti joining us now to break down the impact of this ruling. Karen, good morning to you. We want to check your audio mic first to make sure that you are unmuted.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Thanks for that, Karen.
Okay. Without a voice is just not good.
Okay, I hear you now loud and clear. Is this a victory for Donald Trump?
I think it is. I really do think it is, because it seems to me some of the court members were saying we're worried about the powers of the presidency being constrained. And the other Supreme Court justices on the liberal side were saying, no, we're concerned about a rogue president doing things in his official act role that are criminal in nature, but he's going to be immune. So I think this was a very polarizing decision, and I think that it's going to cause a lot more complication than answers in the long run.
It sure sounds like it. Give me an example of a non-official act. Who's going to make that decision? Can you give me an example of what might be considered non-official?
Well, let me explain a little bit more. There are three ways that these acts happen. If they are unofficial acts, that means the president goes out to dinner and gets in a fist fight. And yes, he can be charged with assault and battery because that's not in his official capacity. Clearly, that's what the court ruled. There are two different kinds of official acts, according to the court. The one is a core constitutional right. And the court used an example of talking to their cabinet, talking to the attorney general, talking to the vice president. Those are things that are core constitutional rights. And the president is completely immune. Now, there's an in-between official act where it's not a core constitutional act. And that is where the prosecution can overcome the presumption of immunity by showing that the president acted in a way that violated that core constitutional duty. So this is like very complicated. Right. And this doesn't mean anything in particular in this case, because it's mostly going to be sent back to the trial court for a determination as to whether it's an official act, unofficial act, or one of these in-between acts.
And then who knows, maybe to the Supreme Court again, right? Okay, how does this decision now apply to the charges in the election interference case and the classified documents case?
Well, Trump is going to argue that it is going to wipe out all of these charges. I don't think the classified documents case has any relevance to this opinion because it had to do with things he did after he was in the presidency. But he's going to argue, hey, you know, me taking documents out, that is a core constitutional right that I had. And so don't be surprised if he makes that argument to try to get it dismissed. As to the case in Georgia, that case might be thrown out, or at least parts of it, if the Supreme Court and, you know, at the lower court and the Supreme Court decides that talking to a state election official and trying to get him to change the vote is part of his official act to make sure that he gets reelected. Again, this decision sounds really bad, but I think it's going to be who enforces it and how it gets enforced that makes a real difference.
Okay, what's going to happen between now and Election Day for the former president with these indictments?
Well, the election interference case is not going to go forward. There's just no way, because now the court has to determine whether these things are official acts, whether there's immunity. There's going to be appeals to the federal appellate court, then probably back to the U.S. Supreme Court. So it could be over a year before there are any trials. And, you know, if he gets reelected, he's going to pardon himself, or at least try. And so these charges may never be brought to a court.
Wow. Okay. So finally, does this mean, because the dissenting justices were very firm in what they had to say in their reaction, Sotomayor talking about an assassination by a president, hypothetical, and that this would basically say that as an official capacity, that a president can do whatever he or she wants? What's your reaction to that?
I'm kind of on her side on that, because it's so broad. If you are acting like, say I'm appointing an ambassador, it's something a little bit more reasonable, and I accept a bribe to give you an ambassadorship. That arguably is something that is within the constitutional core official acts of a president. So how could that not be chargeable? I don't think that makes any sense. And, you know, committing fraud to me is never part of an official act of a president, nor should it be. So I think this is going to empower people who are rogues, who run for president and get elected. And I don't think it's going to, I think the opposite would not have prevented presidents from doing their job. So this is of concern to everybody.
Okay, Karen Conti, our political analyst, thank you so much for joining us and breaking this down for us. We appreciate it.
Sure, Sylvia.